Spring has sprung in my neck of the woods, and what better time to talk about love?
Ubi caritas et amor Deus sibi est.
Whether you're a high schooler or an old guy like me, just trying to learn more about the most important things in life, it's hard to find anything more important than the subject of love. Especially in modern America today, there's a lot of confusion about what love really is. And part of that comes down to the English language as we use it. It causes a lot of confusion. For example, I could say, I love pizza. I love my girlfriend. I love my mom. I love puppies. Those are all vastly different things, or at least should be. If I love my girlfriend in the same way I love pizza, there's a problem. If I love my mom in the same way as I love my girlfriend, there's a problem. Because I don't mean the same thing, or I shouldn't mean the same thing, but I'm using the same word. So this can cause a lot of problems in understanding what love really is, and ultimately this even has effects on marriages. So let's talk about what we mean by these things. One of the best ways to find clarity about what love really is and what the different kinds of loves are is to use other languages that maybe are a little bit more specific. And oftentimes the best languages to be specific are some of the ancient languages like Latin, Greek, etc. And I want to look at some of the most well-known ancient Greek, or at least biblical Greek, words for love to try to make some of these points, some of these distinctions. And these are often known as the four loves. So the first one is storge, storge, and it's written like this. Storge. We would write it in English letters like this. Storge. And storge is natural, instinctual affection, like that which we have for puppies, or children have, or parents have for babies. And it's a feeling, a passion, an emotion. Notice I said instinctual affection. It's something that comes over us. It's not something that we choose. It's a passion, something that we suffer. In other words, that happens to us. You don't say, oh, I want to love that puppy. I want to have affection for that puppy. I want to really like that baby. We just automatically, we see the fuzzy little puppy and we're like, oh, fuzzy puppy. Like, for example, my puppy here, Bosco. The next love that I want to look at is eros. Eros, and it's written like this. Eros. If you look at this, you'll notice it has two marks on it this time. This one is a spirit. It tells us to pronounce it eros and not heros or eros. Eros, it's the sweet spirit, as opposed to this one. And this one is just the accent. You also notice that it's eros, as opposed to the last one, the O sound was O, storge. That's because Greek has two O's, omicron and omega. If you look at the word omicron, it's micro O, in other words, a little O, O. And if you look at omega, it's mega O, that is huge O, O, right? O, big open O. So we have eros as opposed to storge, O sound. And eros is an intense, passionate love or infatuation, falling in love. It is focused and possessive, okay? I want that for my own. I want to be one with that, with my beloved. It is also a feeling, a passion, an emotion, like storge. It's something that happens to us. We don't choose who we're going to fall in love with to begin with. We don't say, I'm going to be attracted to this person and not that person. It just happens to us. It's a natural thing. And as Pope Benedict XVI pointed out, eros is intense. It's something that can be harnessed for good or bad, as the saints show us, for example, on the good end. And lots of things in our modern culture show us on the bad end. But it must be harnessed, otherwise it will control us. We have to harness it for the good and control it, or it will control us and it will become an intoxicating and enslaving god. Okay? Eros. We get lots of other words from it in English that I'm sure you can figure out that come from that word. But how, for example, how do the saints show us that we can harness this for the good? Well, because eros is, like I said, that intense, passionate love, that wanting union with your beloved, the one that you want all for your own. And when we point that toward God, like the saints have, we want to be one with God. We realize that He is goodness Himself. He is ultimate being. He is life. And when we love that goodness and we want to be one with that goodness forever, that is a beautiful, intense thing. Or when we point it toward, for example, our spouse, when we get married, and we want to be one with that person. It tends to be what makes people want to get married. It makes when people fall in love and they want to promise forever. The next one that I want to look at is philia. 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 This one we would spell in English letters like this. Philia. This is a fairly commonly known one, especially, if you watch sports a lot, you see a sport that's played in Philadelphia. The announcers often love to say, here we are in the city of brotherly love. Why? Because Delphos and Philia, you put them together, city of brotherly love. It's exactly what it means. What is philia? What is brotherly love? It's deep reciprocal friendship love, right? Like Jesus has for His 12 apostles. The 12 apostles have for Jesus. Brothers in Christ, that spiritual kind of brotherhood. True deep friendship. And when I say deep reciprocal friendship love, reciprocity is one of the most important aspects of friendship. Okay, friendship. If let's say I follow a guy around all the time, Joe Bob, and Joe Bob is, I'm always talking about him. He's the coolest guy in the world. I'm following him around all the time because I want to be just like him, etc. But he can't stand me, and every chance he gets away from me, he's like, "Wow, that guy is just really weird. Get him away from me. I can't stand him." Is he my friend? No, not at all, because it has to be reciprocal, right? It has to go both ways. So friendship is one of those things that has to go both ways, as opposed to the last one we just looked at, eros. Eros doesn't necessarily have to go both ways. You might fall in love with someone who's not in love with you. Happens all the time. But friendship, for friendship to be there, it has to be reciprocal, okay? And it's also exclusive. So when we have a close friend, it makes automatically walls are involved, right? Let's say somebody is picking on that friend or making fun of that friend behind their back. What am I going to do if I'm really their friend? I'm going to stand up for them. I'm going to put up a wall and say, you can't talk about my friend like that, etc. And that automatically divides me from that person with my friend, right? So you can't be friends, besties with everybody. You have a special relationship with that person, and it automatically excludes other people. The next one that I want to look at is the most important one, and that is agape. Agape, okay? Again, the sweet spirit. Agape. We would write it in English letters like this. Agape. And agape is selfless, Christ-like love, or charity would be the better word for it in English. Charity. Selfless, Christ-like love. It is unexclusive. Okay? Unlike philia, it's unexclusive. It's open to all equally. It is spiritual. It's a spiritual love. In fact, it is the essence of God himself. One of the most powerful and important verses, a couple of them in Scripture, in first letter of John, chapter 4, John says a couple times, God is agape. O theos agape estin. God is charity. So God himself is this love that wants the good of the other, that is willing to sacrifice himself for the good of the other. It is self-sacrificial. It's disinterested. It's not uninterested. It's not that God's not interested in us. It's disinterested. In other words, he's not in it for his own interests. He's in it for the good, for our good, for the good of the other. And it is a choice, not an emotion, not a passion. It's a choice. You know, just like Jesus said, the good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. He planned from all eternity to sacrifice himself for us. He planned to suffer as much as humanly possible for love of us, to show us how much he loved us and to save us. And the icon of this kind of love is Christ crucified. The icon of this, the living image of this that shows us what this love looks like, is Jesus Christ crucified for us. And an interesting thing about this word is Greek is a very ancient language, but before the New Testament, even though Greek existed for a long time before that, the word agape isn't used very much in Greek literature before the New Testament. It's rarely seen. But once you have the New Testament, in the New Testament, which the word love is used, or words for love are used all over the place, the most used word for love in the New Testament is agape. Why? Because finally, Jesus Christ showed up. God himself, who is agape, showed up and showed us what this love looks like. What true love, the deepest love that we exist for. We exist to be made into the image of Christ. We exist to be one with God. We exist to live and be agape in heaven for all eternity. And it ends up to be the most important thing that we are here for. At the end of my life, what is the most important thing? What am I going to be judged on? It's how much has my heart grown to swell full of agape? How much have I learned to love? How much have I put that into practice? How much am I capable of loving, of that kind of love in the image of my Father? And that's, if I have that agape in my soul, I am saved, I'm redeemed. I like the subjective redemption, right? I make it to heaven. And depending on how much I can handle is the amount of glory, the capacity I have to enjoy God in heaven. So this ends up being everything. You know, talk about the most important thing you can learn. So growing in agape. And all four of these loves are important, especially like I mentioned at the beginning, I was talking about marriage. You know, in marriage, you can have and should have all four of these loves. I should have affection for my spouse. She should do things that naturally just give me warm and fuzzies. And I should have eros for my spouse. You know, one of those things that people often, you know, like I said, they get married oftentimes, especially nowadays, because they fall in love. But an important thing to recognize is that the point of marriage is not eros. You know, we see all these Disney princess movies nowadays that convince everyone that marriage is all about eros. It's all about being in love. And that's what love is just that being in love. Just like when you listen to all the songs on the radio, That's what love always seems to mean, is basically just eros. Well, if that's what marriage is all about, till death do us part, and yet, wait a second, it's a feeling, an emotion. You don't control your feelings and emotions completely. You can work on it. You can go on dates and stuff and try to keep sparking it, but ultimately you can't completely control it. It's something that happens to you. Well, because that's not the point of marriage. It's not that if that eros goes away and all of a sudden you're not as attracted to your spouse anymore, that doesn't mean it's over. I should, just leave and try to find somebody else. No, now it's time to grow in agape. It's trying to grow in the other loves, in friendship, in philia, but most of all, agape, to choose to love that person, to choose to sacrifice yourself when it's harder, when it's not so easy, when it's not all warm and fuzzies. And that's how you grow as a person. That's how one of the ways that marriage helps us become holy, become more and more like Christ, self-sacrificing and truly loving, more deeply loving. So we should have that eros. We should work on that, but that's not what marriage is founded on. If it's founded on that, it's founded on sand. And hence, look at so many problems with marriage today in the world, especially in the United States. Philia, should I be best friends with my spouse? Hopefully, yes. And lastly, of course, agape. So I hope this was helpful for you. I hope you learned something and you can pass it on. If you find this helpful, please share it. And God bless.